Ladies and gentlemen, before we commence with the panel discussion, it gives me great pleasure to invite the Honorable Tun Abdullah Badawi, former Prime Minister of Malaysia and founding patron of WIEF, for his keynote address. Dipersilakan, Tun.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. It is my great pleasure to be here for this 11th World Islamic Economic Forum 2015 to speak on the role of Islamic finance and Waqf in healthcare. Waqf is an important Islamic institution supporting both the social welfare and economic development objectives for society. These benefits has historically provided a wide range, including building and upkeep of mosque, education, and healthcare services, as well as guest houses, water wells, and water facilities for travelers. The concept originates from the guidelines what Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave to Umar al-Khattab. The latter has a piece of land in Khaybar and told the Prophet that this was the best property he had and he wanted to donate it to charity. The Prophet advised that he may hold the property as waqf and give itself yield to charity. Ladies and gentlemen, since waqf is an important endowment in perpetuity, it has increased over time in all parts of the Muslim world and became a major supporter of welfare and services, and more recently also an important vehicle of economic development. It is indeed a form of financial intermediation that is well anchored to the real economy and social welfare objectives. An impressive initiative for financing poverty and alleviation through Waqf has been taken by the World Economic Foundation of the Islamic Development Bank, which has set up the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development. This fund is based entirely on Waqf and has a principal targeted capital of USD $10 million aimed at reducing poverty, reducing illiteracy, and combating disease, particularly malaria, tuberculosis, and AIDS. These initiatives have materialized through greater international cooperation in Islamic finance and also has taps into the vast potential of Waqf as a vehicle of economic development. Going forward, the Islamic financial system is envisaged to play an increasingly important role in connecting the world economies through facilitating increased international trade and investment activities. Ladies and gentlemen, in Malaysia, the government and regulatory authorities have made eye-catching efforts to enhance the depth and diversity of the Islamic financial system over the years, which have more recently extended into important activities for the development of Waqf. Hailed as the first of its kind, Malaysia established the Labuan International Waqf Foundation in 2015 with the objective of managing Waqf properties based on the Sharia principle. It recognizes different types of Waqf to attract domestic and international participants. This has resulted in simplified procedures whereby the regulation of Waqf has become less bureaucratic and Waqf became or can operate independently from the state's jurisdiction. Ladies and gentlemen, the potential of Waqf institution in improving the quality of life, the quality of life of the Muslim remains relevant even today as it used to be in the past. Increase in areas of welfare, the innovation of corporate Waqf, pioneered by the Malaysian Johor Corporation or J Corp is another proof that Waqf is a dynamic economic instrument of Islam, which its practicality remains valid regardless of time frame and where the concept is applied or who applies it. The J Corp Waqf program was established on the 3rd of August 2006 when the corporation endowed Ringgit Malaysia 200 million worth of its share in 3 of its public listed subsidiaries, namely Kulim Malaysia Berhad, KPJ Healthcare Berhad, and Johor Land Berhad to a Waqf program. This is something that I think we leave it to all of you because this is something this is a story about it. I did not include for this purpose, but just to mention that some of the projects that we have just started recently, this perhaps can be explained to all of you who are here and will give a lot of interest as to why we would have this kind of what we call the J Corp Waqf program, and this I'm sure will be a support and understanding of what we are trying to do, because this is something which is new compared to what we have already done before. The order to ensure the corpus of Waqf remains intact, only the divided earned from these shares is channeled to the intended beneficiaries. One of them is the finance, if the finance the operation of Waqf An-Nur Clinic and Waqf An-Nur Hospital in several states in Malaysia. And this is another example of we have tried to do in I think this is in Johor, and I think it's good for us to know what development has been made and whether there is support from the people, and I think that's very good. We like to see where the people will respond to some of the ideas that we have already incorporated, and we have already introduced to the Rakyat, and we would like to look forward and to see whether they are going to support what we are going to do. The main objective of Waqf al-Nur clinics and Waqf al-Nur hospital establishment is to provide healthcare treatments, and this is in dialysis facilities at normal charge to the general public, particularly the deserving, regardless of ethnics and religion. The initiatives of JCOP could be replicated by other corporations and philanthropic foundations. It is hoped that any emulating this expiry the access to good healthcare for all members of society, regardless of their genetic status, will improve as more charity-based clinics and hospitals will be built throughout the country. All this is indication of the synergies between the Waqf and Islamic finance to meet meeting the financing demands of the modern economy. The combined resources of Waqf and Islam finance can certainly be used to develop innovative healthcare products or as their most important contributions to society. So again, I will also like to just mention this, why I put it in this speech, that I think this is something that will give the opportunity to all of you to contribute in what way you can understand what we are trying to do. What we are trying to do today takes some time, and we need to support not just the Malaysians and the Muslims, but even the Malaysians and the Muslims, they can look forward to in what way they can support to them. I think that is important. If we can have these issues that has to do with Waqf, and I am sure this will be a very interesting development that takes place in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, the Waqf sector can be further developed through The Waqf sector can be further developed through supportive legislation and policy initiatives. To this and Malaysia and other Muslim countries should coordinate action plan for better exploitation of Waqf resources within and beyond the countries for the benefit of the Ummah. Efforts are also needed, perhaps, to make the Waqf self-supporting and economically viable, which would require, in turn, policy initiatives and law reform. Some of these has already occurred, but there is a score for the wider level of cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, Waqf has become the Islamic equivalent of Davos World Economic Forum. It has become a vibrant venue for important initiatives. I am confident that the WIEF 2015 will be another milestone, a milestone of achievement. I wish all of you great success in your deliberations. And I really hope that ideas from you particularly, they can bring forward for all who are here today to understand what we are trying to do as much as we can, because WIEF is not something that is, I would put this way, that they are not really sure whether what they are trying to do, what they are trying to promote is something that they are trying to understand. If that can be understood, this is good, and inshallah, then I hope that this institution is going to be a very important institution. This is going to be big. This is big. This is not something small, but big. And it is our hope that I have had an opportunity to speak to our IDB chairman on this subject, that IDB is also having their effort has been made also to promote IDB. And then at the same time, what Malaysia is doing. But at the same time, yesterday I think that we were also talking about subjects which is very, very important for the WIEF and how this is going to be instituted. Yesterday, we had a discussion with members of those who were with us, whether Malaysians or non-Malaysians. But all of us, obviously, are very keen, and they want to know what are we going to do and how much we will be able to do, and to what extent we are going to encourage supporters and to come together and, inshallah, with their understanding of what WIEF is all about and what can be beneficial to us, then inshallah, this will continue to I would say that it will be in the interest of the Muslims and even the non-Muslims. We had previously many other issues like IDB. Certainly, this can help us to understand, inshallah, as we go forward, as we have a better understanding of what we are going to achieve and what is going to be good for us, inshallah. This will be a new beginning of what we have to understand, you can understand, and inshallah we will benefit in many ways from our ummah and through the WIEF. Inshallah, I think that is all. I don't think I'm going to say anything else, but we will definitely expect this gentleman to contribute to the contribution that you can make. And at the same time, I think we will also be seeking for support from all of you who are here. And certainly, you can also raise a lot of questions on many issues. Inshallah, again, this is another opportunity that gives us an opportunity, will give us a support that what we want to do, we will do, and we will be supporting, and we will be able to benefit from what we can achieve, from what we are going to get from this kind of discussions that we are having, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. Inshallah, Amin. Thank you so much, the Honorable Tun Abdullah. All right, we will now commence with our first panel discussion. Doctor, just to let you know that we have, I don't know how you're going to squeeze this, about 35 minutes. Is that okay with you? 35 minutes to about 40?
I'll try my
Okay,
best.
the stage is yours. Over to you.
All right. Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to the Honorable Tun Abdullah Badawi, the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. So we gathered this morning on the final day of 11th WIEF to discuss on the topic of the role of Waqf and Islamic finance in healthcare, which I hold this topic very dear to my heart because as a medical doctor, health economy affects my work directly and also my patients. And as all of you may know, healthcare is a big pillar in the economy because it directly affects the workforce of a nation. And I believe it is resilient no matter what your social economic background is. Even if you're rich, you will be more prone to chronic diseases. If you're poor, you're prone to infectious diseases. So no matter who you are, disease never selects its prey. So I've seen a lot of patients coming in at the hospital, some of those who could afford, but this focus of this discussion is to focus on those who are marginalized, who could not afford treatment, the refugees, the disabled, the elderly, those who lie below the poverty line. So we are going to discuss how is it Waqf and Islamic finance can play a role in helping them. So with me, I have three amazing speakers with amazing track records. Next to me, I have Mr. Irfan. He is the Managing Director of the European Islamic Investment Bank in the United Kingdom. He's the best person to speak on Islamic finance because he wrote a book. It is a critically acclaimed bestseller, Heaven's Bankers, Inside the Hidden World of Islamic Finance. With experience of 20 years as an investment banker in London and the Middle East, he co-founded the Dutch bank world-leading Islamic finance team where he structured and led some of the most groundbreaking deals in the industry. And next to him, we have His Excellency Tayeb Abdulrahman Rais, who has been serving as the Secretary General to the Waqf and Minor Affairs Foundation of the UAE. After spending 24 years in the private sector, he decided to take the opportunity to help the people to the management of Waqf funds and empowerment of the minors. And lastly, we have Mr. Zeinuol Abedien. He is the founding chief CEO of the National Waqf Foundation of South Africa. He previously was a lecturer at the University of Johannesburg, and then 11 years ago, he decided to start with his colleagues the National Waqf Foundation of South Africa, and currently is doing various initiatives including conventions, conferences, and Waqf training programs. He has a passion for developing the Waqf sector, particularly for the Muslim minorities. So without further ado, I will allocate 5 minutes for each speaker to introduce themselves, their organization, and how they help in the healthcare sector. Let's start with Mr. Irfan.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Irfan from EIIB Rasmala. Dr. Lutfi, you've asked me to talk about my organization, but actually I want to turn that a little bit around and talk about my industry. Some of you may know EIIB Rasmala. We're an asset manager and an investment bank. And on the asset management side, we do manage endowment funds. So we are in the Islamic finance space, professionally managing the portfolios of endowments. And this is a very unusual thing and something that I want to speak about a little bit later during the questions. But as far as the industry is concerned, it's my firm belief that the Islamic economic model under which Islamic financial institutions are supposed to operate is one that is based on two basic parameters. Firstly, the nature of money, that it must be a medium of exchange and not a commodity to be traded, and therefore you can't trade debt and cash flows and so on. And secondly, that it's based on the real economy, real assets, real trade, because as we know, Allah has allowed trade but forbidden riba. So if these are the two basic parameters, do we believe that the Islamic finance industry today is following that? My belief is no. My belief is that we're forced to operate within a conventional environment. And so we describe it as, putting a square peg into a round hole. And I think that's a problem, because if we view Islamic finance as the solution to the global economic crisis, then I think in its current form, it is not the solution. And one of the areas I believe Islamic finance should operate in a more meaningful way is financial inclusion. And we've talked about it during this economic forum over the last 3 days. Now we have a chance to talk about waqf, endowments, which is a critical aspect of the Islamic economy. And here again, I think there's a little bit of confusion. I know my colleagues are going to talk about it a little bit later. Confusion about whether Islamic finance should be involved in waqf. Well, I'm a firm believer that waqf is something that should be administered by those who are in the right position to administer it. That's not the private sector. Yes, the private sector, particularly professional asset managers, should manage the funds of endowments in order to deliver the best return for the lowest risk. And that is something that present company accepted is not something that's happening globally. So waqf, although historically it has been a critical element of the Islamic economic model, so if we go back to, as the Honorable Mr. Badawi was saying earlier, the days of Umar ibn al-Khattab, who established the Bayt al-Mal, which provided for widows and orphans, the infirm, those who were unemployed. It was a central treasury. It introduced concepts like food vouchers, which is something that we use today. I was at a session on day one of the conference where Dawood Vikri of NCF reminded us that one of the first Oxford University colleges, Merton College, was established under an endowment deed. And if you examine the wording of this endowment deed, it is almost exactly equivalent to the Islamic waqf concept that was formulated by the classical scholars. So if the greatest institutions of Europe were established on this basis, what happened to us? How did we end up where we are? We then progressed to the days of the Ottoman Empire, and again, my colleagues will expand on this. But during the days of the Ottoman Empire, 1/3 of state revenues came from waqf. That's a massive number. And today we see waqf is very much a ignored and marginalized institution. And again, with present company accepted, I think there have been some fantastic advances in South Africa and in the UAE. But what you're seeing on the stage here is definitely the exception. This is not something we see around the world. And I think Islamic finance has a very, very key role to play in professionally managing the assets of endowments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very inspiring. So we move forward to His Excellency Tayeb Abdulrahman. The floor is yours.
Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-mursaleen, Sayyidina Muhammadin wa sahbihi ajma'in. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dubai story of Awqaf and minor affairs, the way I see it is a story of hope. Hope in the sense that awakening Awqaf from when it went under hundreds of years ago by our own fault, by looking at the waqf as a threat and not as an aid. In a sense that Awqaf and Minor Affairs is the only organization that looks after waqf and minors at the same time, which makes it very unique. And the reason for that is His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, Vice President, Prime Minister, and Ruler of Dubai, combined the two, looking at this organization as an asset management organization, which WACF actually is. And just based on what my colleague Harith said on Islamic economy and WACF, people think that WACF came up out of Islamic economy, but it's vice versa. The foundation of Islamic economy is WACF, and the Islamic economy was based on it. Just to correct that information for our esteemed audience. We were established in 2004 with a law number 6 to enhance the minor's life and invest and Waqf in Emirate of Dubai. For the past decade, we have managed to grow our assets from a mere 200 million dirhams to close to 3 billion dirhams in about 10, 11 years. And by the way, my colleague Harith here is a great supporter to us, and we have a great dealing with him. So we have already built a great relation with the industry. To come out of the conventional Waqf portfolio and look, we have created businesses with the public. We have created public trust. We have created many other portfolio under the Waqf to generate funds. In respect to the medical and health endowment, we, as Awqaf and Minor Affairs, we work under 5 different pillars or 5 different accounts, or masarif in the correct term. We have health account, we have education, social account, Islamic and mosque account, and Umum al-Khair, which is piety and righteousness. And under each these segments, we disperse funds according to the donor's wish, where the donor donates funds as an endowment. The endowment goes under a specific parameter where the donor wish is being to be carried out. And when it comes to health, unfortunately, I'm here to say today that it is the lowest cared for sector at Awqaf and Minor Affairs, along with education, where we have 90% of our funds today in Islamic and Islamic account and mosques. The rest are not being fulfilled. So our biggest challenge and role is to make sure that where Islamic affair and mosques are, we need to bring the rest to that level. We're not going to decree the funds in the Islamic and mosque account, but to bring up the health and education. Health sector is a very important sector throughout the history for Awqaf. And if you look at Egypt, Morocco, the greater Syria, they all had this account was set and cared for, whether it was through treating patients on a free basis, or generate funds so they can go ahead and treat patients for free as an endowment project. Having said that, I think my time is over, and I'll leave the panel to the rest of the.
I guess last but not least, we have Mr. Zeinuol Abedien, which I believe has prepared some slides for us. Floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think we'll have to forego the slide due to time restrictions.
I see.
Okay. Dear brothers and sisters and honorable guests here, audience, Awqaf South Africa, being in a minority Muslim country, was established in 2001 after the Mandela era, post-apartheid era. There was grave concerns about, as a Muslim minority living in a sea of poverty there, what should we as a Muslim community do to alleviate poverty and to address issues and concerns within the Muslim Ummah itself. And we decided that the best alternative would be to establish a Waqf organization that would be a sustainable organization and that would be available and be a community-based organization that could help and assist in various projects and programs going down well into the future. We definitely look at Awqaf as something long-term. It's not short-term. It has to have multi-generational usage and multi-generational benefit. It is community-based, it is homegrown, it is registered as a trust under the Trust Property Control Act. It's governed by various other legislation like the Income Tax Act, the Non-Profit Organization Act, And of course, we have our own purpose-built, purpose-drawn-up constitution that resembles a waqfiyah. So we even use the terms of waqf and mutawalli in our constitution to address the different functions of the organization and its structure. So we structured with a board of mutawallis, a council of mutawallis, and we have a management board. We largely have three major focus areas, the one being the advocacy, mobilization of waqf funds, and investment of waqf funds, management of waqf funds. So that's the real money side of it, the education side of it, the creation of awareness, because we do find, of course, that the word waqf and the word awqaf was hardly actually even known in the Muslim community in South Africa. So that still remains a major challenge. The second area is where we initiate and support various projects and programs, be it in healthcare, in education, in youth development, and so forth. And the third area of focus is human resource development. Since we're a volunteer-based organization, and we also see ourselves as multi-generational, we see it very important and critical to continuously train people in the concepts of waqf, in its history, in its development, and so forth. So we also run a lot of regional leadership training programs. We even have training programs for the ulama in our country. So corporate governance is key. Multi-generationalism is key. Our investments is a very important area as well. In terms of our support areas, yes, healthcare, education, youth leadership, arts and culture, masjid and Islamic centers, poverty alleviation. Social cohesion is a very important area for us, as we have a multicultural society, multi-ethnic, multiracial. We have lots of problems of xenophobia and all of that, if you read about our history and our current history in South Africa. In terms of healthcare, we have a special project which we run as Daru Shifa, and in this category we have cataract operations. We've done, together with the Islamic Medical Association, over 3,500 cataract operations purely to the poor and non-Muslim community. We've also now developed the elders' home concept or family village, similar to the Dubai idea. We've got land, people have donated, and financed mainly through public donations. I think I'm going to actually stop there, just to give you an idea also that we also have other NGOs that run mobile clinics. We've got one NGO that runs an ambulance service, and we have another one that runs AIDS programs, because AIDS and TB are major health issues in South Africa. Shukran.
Thank you very much. And so we move on to the questions. I will direct one question to each speaker, but of course we would encourage conversations in between all of you. So any of you could answer the question as well if you guys are interested. So my first question goes to Mr. Zeinuol Abedien. It's very interesting for him because he's a minority in a non-Muslim majority country. And even in Malaysia, I could say that many of us are still ignorant about the concept of waqf. If you're in the Islamic banking or in the finance, maybe you're very clear about the concept of waqf. But for many of us, we see that waqf, we straight away think that building mosque and kurban for the poor. But in fact, waqf is more than that. Like in South Africa, what they have done is that they make cash waqf as investments instead of just benefiting the person directly with no sustainability. So how do you address the problem of the public ignorance about waqf? Most of us are confused. What's different with waqf? How it is different from normal donations? Can you explain?
Jazakallah for that question. I think it's very important whenever we have any discussions, the first thing that we have to do is really to try and explain the concept of waqf. And we do this through television, we do this through radio programs, we do this through a monthly article on waqf, and this is published in a newspaper. We've also published some books on waqf. When we started, literally, we had hardly any access to any literature in English on waqf, apart from perhaps a document or two and some conference papers that emanated from the Islamic Development Bank seminar on Awqaf and management. So continuously we have to run training programs, we have to run imam development programs so that imams are able to speak to the audiences at the mosques. I have perhaps only heard 2 khutbahs internationally from Makkah, and I have recordings of those on waqf. Secondly, in South Africa, hardly any mosque actually ever speaks about waqf because there is broadly ignorance about it. And the issue is about, when we talk about waqf, it's about mosques, madrasas, perhaps just a label on a Quran saying waqf. So the idea of a commercial waqf or sustainability of awqaf, or as a community fund, or as the takaful or social security fund of the community is not there. We don't see awqaf as a means of somebody mentioned about the Yusuf alayhi salam 7 lean years. We don't see that as our insurance in the community, and we find generally awqaf has had this role to play of bridging the lows within the Muslim Ummah as our ups and downs went over the years. So we have to continuously bring to the fore, to the public knowledge, through television, through radio, through newsprint, through books, etc., and get people to understand. Even we have a Waqf Academy, online academy, that is in the process, in the making, that will also enable anybody in the world to actually log on and register for a short course.
It's very interesting. It's very much effort he has done for the past 10 years. And I had a chat with His Excellency Tayeb earlier in the room, and one thing he mentioned interests me, that although Waqaf is a foundation, but it should be run as a business, right? And because we are holding the fund, the trust of the Waqif, the people have given us the trust to distribute their Waqaf to the people who need it the most. So how do you address this? How do you make sure that the Waqaf are distributed to the person who need it most? And how do you follow up on that?
Well, like any business, if you don't follow your business, your business will get lapsed and you go bankrupt. And Waqf is no different. Unfortunately, throughout the century, we as Muslims have neglected Waqf, where the Western world has picked up on it, and its ideals that this is the way to go forward. If you look at the great hospitals and universities throughout the world, it's all based on Waqf. Whether it's Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge, they are all endowment and they are all Waqf properties. That's why it was built, to support the student who cannot support themselves. And how do we monitor it? As I said, it's just like if you are a banker, which basically Awqaf is a miniature bank. We are asset management organization, and we follow our customers, we follow our donors, and we follow the beneficiaries of our different accounts. If you take, for instance, Miners Fund, we raise Miners Fund where it used to be set idle in the courts, and build a property on a Waqf land where nobody can touch, and created a social need, which was a low-income housing. Mm-hmm. So we hit 3 birds with 1 stone, and we follow that. How do we follow that? The return that we get, the miners' share goes into their account, and we get our share from the land, and who benefits from it? People who are low income. So every property, every dirham that comes into our portfolio is accounted for. Like if you take, for instance, today we run over 3,600 rentable units, and each unit is an account on its own. If you take the donors, every donor has his own account where we account for how much money we're getting from that donor, and where is it going and how we spend. And at the end of the year, we invite the donors and we present them with small trophies just in recognition. These people have all the money in the world, most of them, and they don't need a financial recognition. They want social recognition. And we use that to encourage other people. Initially, when I started this trip, people didn't want to be recognized because they said, no, this is waqf, is between me and God. Yes, we understand that. However, if I don't talk about you to the others, we cannot encourage others. So that journey has already started in Dubai, where people don't mind when they donate for us to go out and talk about them. And I remember a gentleman came forward and said, well, you didn't talk about me. He said, well, your donation wasn't that big. And he came and back again and donated a sum that we can put his picture and his article in the papers.
Amazing.
It's all about, you see somebody's doing a goodwill, well, I can do better.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Can I add to that, actually?
Yes, sure.
I know that we're running out of time, but I think this is really, really important. This is very unusual. I know I mentioned this in my opening remarks, but we do not see endowments, Islamic endowments around the world, acting in a professional manner. I know that Mr. Tayeb publishes his accounts on a regular basis. All endowments should do this. It's an amana. You have a trust. Imagine you stand before God on the day of judgment and you said, I was responsible for widows and orphans, and I left the office at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and I didn't really ensure that my assets were managed in the most efficient way. That's a sin on you. Right? You have a trust and you have an obligation towards people who need that money. And yet around the world there are approximately $1 trillion worth of endowment assets. And the vast majority of those are managed in a parochial, narrow, undiversified, low-yield manner. This is not what we should be doing with such assets. I think we should be reversing the clock, having a look at what we did in Islamic history and that we then gave to Europe and the rest of the world. We need to go back to that.
I guess what you said has just answered the question that I was about to ask you. But that's fine. Okay, so being 20 years in the business of banking, right? How do you see, what is the big difference between conventional methods and Islamic finance, and how do you sell these ideas to the non-Muslims?
Well, I think there are this universal appeal in the Islamic economic model, and often I am careful to refer to it as an ethical model rather than a religiously focused model, because there are many people who are not Muslims who believe in the concept of a one-to-one relationship between the financial economy and the real economy. And we've seen the global financial crisis arise partly as a result of the intangibility of financial instruments. So these instruments that a lot of the investment banks in the world were trading were like layers of an onion. You peel away the layers and there was nothing underneath. There was an intangible asset. They're trading these contracts which have no intrinsic worth, and yet we're describing them as AAA rated paper. That's the fundamental difference. I mentioned the nature of money, that money is a medium of exchange and not a commodity to be traded, and the fact that Islamic financial transactions must have a real asset underpinning. If that fundamental difference is followed, then we're talking really about an ethical form of financing, which ensures that the financial economy does not diverge from the real economy. And I think if we apply those concepts, then actually we have a much more stable and robust financial system. I don't think we have that today. I think today we have an Islamic financial model which is obviously heavily based on the conventional model. I think we have a cultural issue within Islamic finance where, to my mind, the industry has been somewhat hijacked by conventional bankers, and we need to reverse that. I'm very pleased to see a lot of students walked into the room. No doubt many of you are looking at Islamic finance as a future career. I think it's really important that you remain true to your ideals, because I meet many of you and I see that you're very passionate about wanting to do the right thing, a noble thing. And I can tell you that within the industry, people get jaded and they get, they start to lose their ideals and they start to behave more and more like conventional bankers. And that culture has become one of conventional banking. So I'm really keen that we revert to that culture of ethics within the Islamic finance industry. And I think if we do that, then we have a much greater chance of expanding this industry from where it's at today, which is about $2 trillion, to multiples of that. Look at the global ethical finance industry, what we call ESG, environmental, social, and governance. That's worth $59 trillion, 30 times as much as the Islamic finance industry. There's a huge amount of overlap between ESG and Islamic finance. Surely Islamic finance should be incorporating some of that. I wrote a white paper a few weeks ago that we presented. You can find it on Rasmallah's website. This paper is actually talking about Dubai as one of the capitals of the global Islamic economy. And one of the things that we're suggesting is that state-run money in the GCC, a proportion of that should be allocated to Sharia-compliant portfolios. Right now, it's not. Right now, it's largely conventional. But even if only 20% of that were put into Sharia-compliant management, you would immediately add overnight $36 billion to the Islamic global asset management industry, which is more than half of what it is today. It's a tiny number. And yet, endowments are worth $1 trillion. Imagine what that can do for the Islamic finance industry.
Amazing. That clears a lot of air. And we have 3 minutes left for questions from the floor. Okay, we have one very enthusiastic. Okay, Mr. Go ahead with your question. Please state your name, where you're from, and your question.
I'm Dr. Ghazali from Islamic Development Bank, Alumni, Malaysia. My question to all the 3 panels and the House here today. When we talk about the question of Waqf in healthcare, we have to understand, to remember the underpinning of the healthcare that is confronting the Muslim world and the world together. I come back to Brother Faris because you talk about the Islamic finance and the conventional finance. My point to you today, as far as Islamic finance today, we are getting confused because Islamic banking is a conduit. It is not the end in itself. Therefore, unless we have Sharia-based economy lifestyle, we are not solving the problem. I fear, young doctor, Mr. Chairman, you are missing the point. Why? Because the disease of today is an outcome of a lifestyle that is not Islamic Sharia. So unless today, all of you here, talk that the Muslims today, and generally the rest, goes back to the lifestyle that's not hedonistic, you are not going to solve the problem of today. Thank you very much.
Okay, I proceed with the second question. Sitting in front, yes, please state your name, where you're from, and your question.
Yes, thank you very much. I am the first Counselor Economic, the Iran Embassy in Kuala Lumpur. Thank you for the presentations and thank you for the excellent remark of the former Prime Ministers regarding the WIEF, the very important issue. But the more important thing that I am thinking is the concept of the WIEF, that still I see that those who are actually have a presentation having the common concept on the WIEF. Because as far as the Irfan talking about the trade, that's very important surely in respect to the theory, but in respect to the practice, you cannot clear what we can going ahead in respect to the practice. And also with respect to the Excellency Tayeb Abdulrahman, that you're talking about the mosque and health care, but this is not a common issue that we will see in South Africa, because the Zeinuol Abedien said about the, for example, education, leadership programs, the health care, and a lot of things that should be covered by the WIEF. So this is the thing that in practice, because we should link the local to the regional and to the global, that so that everybody actually have a one concept and coming and do it the practice, because this is important. Islam actually come for the human being. So my proposal, as you mentioned regarding online academic, I think it would be very good if, for example, we have international university on WIEF it would be very, very important to actually to be doing research and entrepreneurship of the WAQF, because this is a lot of asset here, and the Islamic world should have a common understanding on the WAQF. So to implement, so to be actually have a good practice for the world. It would be very important, at least we hear in this conference a clear proposal from you from this stage. Thank you
Thank you very much. I'm sorry we don't have time for any more questions, but I would like to ask the speakers to comment on any of the both questions. Any of you?
I think there were more comments than questions, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that we've been asked.
Would you like to reply?
If I may, I think Dr. Ghazali's question, I think it's a very important contribution that he's made. And I think that when we talk about Waqf, we always embed it in the maqasid of Sharia. I think that's a very critical point that we understand, that whatever we do has got to be done in the public interest and with Islamic concepts in mind of the maslahah, that is the public benefit and the promotion of good, the forbidding of evil. And that is what Islam actually wants us to do. And part of the Waqf is about the promotion of Islamic civilization and Islamic dawah. So I think we need to look at Waqf holistically and not compartmentalize it. And the Islamic finance industry needs to look at Waqf as its parent rather than its stepchild, so that the Waqf sector actually becomes embedded within the framework of Islamic finance. So when we talk about sukuk and all these other financial instruments, then Waqf should be really integrated and not seen as, well, you know, should we, can't we, how, all those other issues, you know.
Yes.
Shukran.
Okay, that was a very great discussion, but I guess time doesn't do justice towards the experience of all the three speakers here. But I'm sure they will be around, so you guys can go ahead and just ask anything you have in mind after this. And I give back the floor to Madam Chair.